All right. Okay, we are live here at the Natural Health Improvement Center. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Ann Auburn. I am talking tonight about adrenal fatigue. You've probably heard this term before. And adrenal fatigue can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'm going to go through this with you tonight, and I buffed up on this and studied some more lectures and books so that I could try and give you the latest and greatest information. And this is a problem that's been facing man for many years now, decades. And it's just one of those things that we sort of live with in a fast-paced, industrialized society that we live in. So we're going to try and help you with this. So adrenal fatigue, are you sick and tired of feeling sick and tired? And let's see here. All right. Just need to find my slides here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so adrenal fatigue. Do you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, but you don't have the energy to even carry yourself? We've all had days like this, but some of my patients, it's years of this. And so if you're feeling this way, then you need to think, could I have adrenal fatigue? And so adrenal fatigue questionnaire, now this is a very abbreviated version of this, but are you tired for no reason? Are you feeling run down and stressed or even burned out? Are you having trouble getting up in the morning? Are you having a feeling like you're more awake or energetic after 6 or 8 p.m. and then you're having difficulty sleeping at night? Do you have a coffee crutch or colas or salty or sweet foods that you have to have in order to make it through the rest of your workday? Are you struggling to keep up with life and just normal daily demands? Are you having difficulty bouncing back from stress or illness? Like an example would be like if you got bad news about somebody you were close to dying, or you did just a workout, that you used to be able to do just fine, but then you were just wiped out for 2 or 3 days. Do you have decreased sex drive? Because that part of the body is also affected. If you have any of these things, then there's very strong possibility that you have adrenal fatigue. Okay, now other adrenal fatigue signs. This is not always adrenal fatigue, but often it can be. Elevated blood pressure, using up your core nutrients, feeling depleted all the time, craving fat, sugar, salt, and then this leading to weight gain, to the belly weight gain, which so many of us are fighting the battle of the bulge, especially as we get older. But also changes in the brain's responsiveness to taste. Like, it's not just the fact that you've gotten into the habits or you crave this, but your brain now is getting these signals that tell you, oh, these foods do taste better than the healthier foods. You have to eat these. So it actually goes back to what's happening in the brain, the hypothalamus and the pituitary and those other organs, and that's why it affects your hormones, your thyroid, your adrenals, your sex drive, just your depression, your anxiety. All of that is affected because of these changes in the brain. And let's see, I think that's all we had on that. So especially like if people just try to lose weight and they've tried everything under the sun, they're not losing weight. I mean, it could still just be bad habits, but it can also be that you have adrenal fatigue and your brain is not allowing you to make those changes, and you're also having all of these hormonal issues that are causing you to gain weight. You have high cortisol, too high all the time, overstressed all the time, in what we would call fight or flight or sympathetic overdrive all the time. All right. Next slide here. Let's see if I can get it. Okay. So working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And that's fine, and that makes sense. But when you have adrenal fatigue, it's a totally different ballgame. We're talking beyond just regular stress. You're just not the same, person you used to be. You feel like the things that you used to be able to do, you can't do anymore. And why is that? There's something going on. So many of us, we just, as Americans, we just kind of like push through, and we feel like, we can do it if we just work a little bit harder. And that's a great attitude. But many of us, for many, many years, have ignored the signs of adrenal fatigue, of our immune systems and our endocrine systems and our nervous system not working the way it should. And we just are, kind of pawning that off to, I'm a busy mom with 3 kids. You have a special needs child. I'm working 2 jobs. I was recently divorced. I lost 2 or 3 people to, severe illness and hospitalization, that sort of thing. So pay attention to those signals and listen to your intuition. Okay, so cortisol, what I want to say here is that cortisol is important. It's not that all cortisol is bad. If you have too much cortisol or if you have not enough cortisol, both of those things can be bad for you. Cortisol is actually life-sustaining. It's an adrenal hormone that maintains balance in bodily functions, and therefore it improves health and sense of well-being. But when the stress is sustained over a long period of time, or if you have a huge, big stress all at once, like a severe hospitalization, like some of these people that have survived COVID-19 and people that have survived severe like pneumonia or influenza or other, heart issues, things like that. They can be in adrenal fatigue because that is too much cortisol for too long, and then there's these negative effects that happens, and then eventually that cortisol system is going to just give out, and then you're going to crash. And some people come to me and they have already crashed, and then we have to backtrack. So what is adrenal fatigue? It's really a collection of signs and symptoms. It's caused by impaired adrenal function. There's really no diagnostic code for it. In fact, I never write adrenal fatigue on any of my encounter forms anymore, because I had a couple of people, they went to go get insurance, life insurance or medical insurance, and they were not able to get it because I had written adrenal fatigue on their form, and they thought that they had like Addison's, where they're not making any cortisol at all, and that's not the case. It's one of those sort of in-between disorders or dysfunctional situations that is not really recognized by traditional medicine, unfortunately. It's most commonly associated with intense and prolonged stress, but it can also be during or after an acute or chronic infection or stress. And its paramount symptom is fatigue that is not relieved by sleep. And adrenal fatigue is not readily identifiable. You could look like me and have adrenal fatigue. You could be that cute little grandma, or, that 26-year-old just graduated from college person who, they want to go out and attack the world, life, their new career, but they can't because they feel terrible. And on the outside, they might look great. They might be able to put their makeup on, get dressed up, things like that, and they look fairly normal, but inside things are not working right. They're not having the right responses to things that they encounter in their daily life. So you may look and act relatively normal, but you live with a general sense of unwellness, tiredness, or gray feelings. You might feel depressed, but not because you're depressed. A lot of these people have said this to me. I'm really not depressed. I'm just super tired, and I have tried everything I can think of to get that handled. And a lot of these people go to their primary care physician, and they are they ask their doctor, could I have hypothyroidism? And of course, they just normally do just a TSH, which is really a very wimpy way to look at the thyroid. Unfortunately, that's been the dogma of medicine for 20, 30, 40 years. We also have to look at the patient, and we have to look at some other labs. We don't want to just look at the TSH, because thyroid stimulating hormone is just the signal from the brain to the thyroid. It doesn't tell you what your actual circulating functional T3 levels are. It doesn't tell you what your reverse T3 is. It doesn't tell you if you have thyroid antibodies. You could have an autoimmune disorder and not know it because nobody ever bothered to check your antibodies. So we look at all of those things because we know it's part of adrenal fatigue, and it could be and usually is a combination of thyroid and adrenals. It's not just one or the other. These things are not mutually exclusive. I know you want to make it simple. You want that black and white answer, but that's just not the way it works, especially with chronic disease and chronic fatigue and chronic long-term stress and all the ball of wax that goes along with that. So people whose adrenals are fatigued often have to use caffeine, sugar, carbs, other stimulants to get anything done. So this syndrome has been called non-Addison's hypoadrenia, subclinical hypoadrenia, neurasthenia, adrenal apathy, and adrenal fatigue. And again, on my encounter forms, I just put fatigue. And then the patient and I have that conversation about it's coming from the adrenals. And then although this affects millions of people, conventional medicine won't recognize it as a distinct syndrome, unfortunately. So adrenal fatigue and the stress response. So what are we talking about when we say that? Acute stress response. This was first described by Walter Cannon in the 1920s as a theory that animals react to threats with a general discharge of sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. You've probably heard that many times before. Are you going to get revved up to fight, or are you going to run to save your life? Running from the dinosaur, running from the saber-toothed tiger, running from, that dog that's going to bite your heels, whatever. So the response was later recognized as the first stage of general adaptation syndrome. So your body's trying to adapt to the situation at hand, save your life, get you out of danger, et cetera, et cetera. And this regulates the stress response among vertebrates, people with spines, animals with spines, and other organisms. So that's, what adrenal fatigue and the stress response is. Now, how do the adrenal glands function during the stress response? Well, Hans Seeley recognized that the adrenals are very important glands because they produce several hormones involved in the stress response. Hans Seeley defines stress as the non-specific response of the body to any demand. So again, here we get, it could be, a college student that is pulling all-nighters in order to pass that exam over and over and over again, or it could be a mom with 3 kids who's not gotten a break in between, who's just, running herself ragged, trying to keep the whole household and the children and everything going, taking care of the husband, the house, whatever. And that could be even worse if you're, say, like a single mom or a single parent, I should say, without that support system. Or it could be somebody who went through a really bad illness, or somebody who had Epstein-Barr virus or mono, and then their body was just never the same. So the term stress was applied to physiology as the general adaptation response. So there are 4 phases of this general adaptation response, and the general adaptation response stages are, first, there's alarm. Something's happening. I need to put out that fire, or save that kid from getting hit by a car, or I need to get this report done, or whatever that alarm is. Number 2 is recovery. This is after the stress has passed, the emergency has passed, things should go back down to normal again. If they don't go back down to normal, then you get into this resistance phase where the body is trying to resist, the crashing, the fatigue, the this, the that, and it's working hard. It's constantly keeping that cortisol high. It's not going back down to the normal baseline. And then you have exhaustion. And this is like what I would call stage 4 adrenal fatigue, where literally some of these people can't get out of bed. They're depressed. They might be on several medications. They might be diagnosed with POTS. Several things may have happened. They may have seen multiple specialists trying to figure out, like, what do I do about this? And that's a bad situation because the drugs are not going to heal you. Lifestyle changes and, supplements and encouraging the body and healing those adrenals and the thyroid and the hormonal system and the immune system, all of that. It's a long road. There's no easy fix for this. So, alarm phase, we talked about this, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system's activated, adrenal glands are stimulated, and you pump out norepinephrine and cortisol. recovery phase. After this perceived stress or actual stress, the body returns to its baseline state, basal state. Hormone and neurotransmitter levels come back into balance, or they're supposed to. And if they don't come back into balance, then you're going to be running into resistance phase. This is when the actual threat has passed, but it's still perceived in the mind and the body as real. That threat is still there. Cortisol remains elevated. DHEA levels may be normal or slightly low. But once I see those DHEA levels going low, I know the body has been under a fair amount of stress for a long time. This is the beginning of the imbalance leading to adrenal stress and eventually adrenal fatigue, exhaustion, etc. And then we have exhaustion phase. The DHEA levels have dropped. The cortisol levels may now be low. The patient feels exhausted and depleted, and this is true adrenal fatigue or exhaustion. So stage 4 adrenal fatigue, we could call it, or late adrenal fatigue, but this is not a good situation to be in. The other thing we find here is because the way hormones are formed, you're also going to have what we call pregnenolone steal. Pregnenolone steal is where your pregnenolone levels are very low, like below 50. And pregnenolone, and the way hormones are made, you have cholesterol at the top, and then you make pregnenolone out of that, and then pregnenolone will split into making progesterone and cortisol, or it will go to the other side of the cascade and make DHEA, testosterone, and estradiol. And pregnenolone steal occurs because your body is producing so much cortisol all the time. It's stealing pregnenolone to make that cortisol, not for all the other functions that those hormones do for your brain, your body, your muscles, your thinking, your ability to focus, and all that. Okay, so a similar adaptation syndrome, and this is just an analogy so you can kind of understand it better, is the development of type 2 diabetes. The alarm is carbohydrates ingested, blood sugar levels rise, insulin is produced. In the recovery phase, after the sugar is metabolized, insulin levels fall back down to normal. Resistance is chronic and excessive and chronic carbohydrate intake, causing insulin levels to remain elevated and insulin resistance to develop. And exhaustion, eventually insulin output is unable to keep up with the demand. And the pancreas fails, and the patient now has type 2 diabetes, and all of this can be attributed to adrenal fatigue also. It's a very similar, this can happen right alongside the adrenal fatigue because of the stress on the liver. The liver stores sugar as glycogen, and being in chronic fight or flight and chronic sympathetic overstimulation makes you pump out lots of sugar all the time. And you have these sugar levels that go up and then come down and then go up and come down. And that's very hard on your pancreas because the pancreas is trying to figure out, okay, how much blood sugar is there? How much insulin do I have to put out so that I can get the insulin in the cells? There's this whole dance going on, and it's made very difficult when a person has adrenal fatigue. So normal versus excessive stress response. So a normal stress response is beneficial. It's essential. You need it. Have you ever had, one of those situations where you feel like, oh, geez, I got to get this project done, and you pull it off and it's great and you're elated and you feel like, hey, give me more, that's great. But if stresses like that are constantly happening all the time with no breaks, then you're going to get that chronic adrenal fatigue. And the adrenal gland function becomes suboptimal, and following this, the adaptations by the neurological system, the hormonal system, the immune system occur. And this is, mild adrenal dysfunction or adrenal hypofunction without complete failure. Let's see. So, adrenal fatigue can wreak havoc with your life. In the more serious cases, you may have difficulty getting out of bed, or more, and it could be, maybe you can get out of bed an hour or two a day, but maybe less. Every organ and system in your body can be profoundly affected. Oops, back the other way. Okay, so how does it affect the rest of the body? What are the changes that occur in your body chemistry, your cardiovascular system, the sex hormone system, the sex drive? Lots of other alterations take place. So Your body does its best to make up for the underfunctioning adrenal glands, but there is a price. And one of those costs is the frontal cortex. Okay, that's your brain right here. This is the thinking part of the brain, the part that, helps you make decisions, helps you make complex, difficult, layered decisions. It's complex thinking. We all have to do it every day when we're driving a car, or making a decision about buying, a house or a car or a lawnmower or whatever. So this functioning is affected. The stress actually affects the functioning of the neurons in the frontal cortex. So this leads to difficulty with decision making, and poor decision making can result. 34% of people cite a lack of willpower as a barrier to best health choices. And 56% say that their willpower to improve, they'd have to feel less fatigue and more energy. So you can see how this is like a catch-22. It's like, I can't get better unless I feel better. But that's what we're here for, because what we try to do is, in a stepwise fashion, we give you each piece of it. We might start with hormones, we might start with thyroid, we might start with nutrition and changing your diet. And we do what you can tolerate. So, and it could be a slow process, but we're not going to give up. As long as you don't give up, we won't give up. Okay, stress and cardiovascular disease. So multiple pathways to increase cardiovascular disease because of adrenal fatigue and stress. Increased inflammatory markers, like many of you have probably had the ultra-sensitive CRP marker here at our office. It's vascular inflammation. Increased fibrinogen, that's a blood clotting factor. It's just one of many, but it's not a good sign for your heart. Following high cortisol and central obesity, we also get the problem of insulin resistance, and maybe prediabetes, that is prediabetes, or diabetes, I should say. Increased blood pressure and heart rate, decreased heart muscle electrical stability. You might have heart palpitations, runs of a fast heart rate, and atrial fibrillation is another common arrhythmia. And eventually this could cause low blood pressure. Like after your body gets at stage 4 and you're in that exhaustion phase, then your blood pressure may start to go down. In fact, when I see a patient who's chronically fatigued and I see a blood pressure of 90/55, I start thinking, okay, this could be long-standing adrenal fatigue. We got to get to the root causes of this, and there's never going to be just one root cause. There's going to be causes. I just want to make that very clear, because people think you're going to give them a couple supplements and then they're going to be great. It doesn't work that way. I just have never seen it. It's very, very rare that you might have a case where you just hit the nail on the head with hormones or thyroid or this or that, and just doesn't work that way. Chronic stress is associated with, a lot of changes in the body, and you have to rehab all of those neurological, immune, and circulatory functions, endocrine functions that have gotten messed up and have usually been messed up for a while. So chronic stress is definitely associated with increased cardiovascular events over a 5-year period. And cardiovascular events, we're talking about blood clots, heart attacks, and strokes. And, not only in this country did we have many, many, incidents of those things happening because of, the viral infection that was so horrible and, is prevalent right now as well. But those people, many of them were just sitting ducks. They were sitting there they already had inflammation. They already had insulin resistance. They already had, difficulty dealing with stress. They were already fatigued. So these are things I hope that I'm, impinging on you, that, it's like, it's great to be tough. As Americans, working hard and running our businesses and everything, we think, okay, more is better and I can do more and all of that. At some point, you really want to work on finding some balance in your life. It is good to have drive. It is good to be excited about things. It is good to be able to make lots of things happen, but also try to always seek some balance there. And be aware of these signs that I'm talking about, because, it could make you, very predisposed to having bad reactions when you do actually get ill with a virus or something else. And let's see. Okay, gut health. So this is something I've learned over the last few years, that with high stress, there is decreased blood flow to the gut. And that decreased blood flow also changes the intestinal environment and the beneficial bacteria, and can lead to bowel dysbiosis. Now, bowel dysbiosis, I do a whole talk on that, and I'd be glad to send you our PowerPoint on that if you ever want it. But dysbiosis means bad, gut, beneficial bacteria, disorder. So it's a disorganized gut, an unhappy gut, a gut with inflammation or issues or overgrowth of bacteria or not enough good bacteria and inflammatory markers. And it can be uncomfortable, or it can just make you tired too. That's the other thing, Sometimes you just get tired from having bowel dysbiosis. A lot of times people don't understand, tiredness, there's something wrong with my gut. Well, in integrative medicine, pretty much everything goes back to the gut. And you can see here with adrenal stress, the same thing happens. We do have to consider the gut. Now, am I going to jump on that initially when you come in here? No, I'm probably not. I'm going to hope and pray that taking your supplements, changing your diet, improving your lifestyle, getting more balance, more mindfulness in there, along with the other things that we find, balancing your hormones, may just handle that. But certainly if you have gut issues, there's many tests we can do to sort that through. Okay, and then decreased secretory IgA. Secretory IgA is kind of like that test that we look at and we go, is this immune system in the gut functioning? That's the immune system test in your gut, secretory IgA. Is it overworking? Is it underworking? So it will decrease your secretory IgA. It will decrease your willpower. And here we are back to the cravings, the poor choices, and then therefore perpetuating the bowel dysbiosis. There are decreased levels of stomach acid and pancreatic digestive enzymes. So this is something to keep in mind. I mean, we know that as a person ages, after you're, greater than 40, 45 years old, the amount of stomach acid and oftentimes the amount of pancreatic enzymes and sometimes the function of the bile that comes from the gallbladder and liver to break down your fats. Sometimes that is not working as well as we age, and we do know that those digestive enzymes go down every decade. So that's something to think about, and we have little tricks that we can use to figure out how much, supplementary betaine hydrochloride, that's your good stomach acid you need, and that's often the basis of many, many issues of bowel dysbiosis. And people just keep getting, altered gut states over and over again. It's like, okay, it's not this now, but now it's something else. And that's because they're not getting those enzymes and the stomach isn't breaking down everything the way it should. In reproductive function and stress, hormone issues are more common. It can include no periods, heavy periods, irregular periods, infertility, and this is for men and women. Of course, the men don't have the periods, but the infertility, the semen production, the hormone production, and also poor thyroid function, which also affects fertility issues. And there's more to this, but that's the simplified version. Mood and stress, hypervigilance, like you're worried about every little thing. Everything has to be perfect all the time. And if it's not, you're just freaking out. That is anxiety. And that is a sign of adrenal fatigue, Not always, some people are wired differently and have a little of this all the time. But sometimes, you kind of wonder, could they possibly have had this just coming out of the womb, Did they have a stressed mother? Was their mother a smoker? Did their mom take medications when they were pregnant for them? Things like that. I had a patient here today that we talked about this many times, that, we think that it came, in utero is when the issues started. So also major depression, chronic stress will deplete dopamine. That's kind of that neurotransmitter that gives you that feeling of happiness, satisfaction, accomplishment. And the patient ends up with the responses to stress just turning down, causing the depression. You're not getting the highs and lows that you got before, just not responding as well. You feel flat. Or, many times because of their issues, they get on medications, and what you have to realize is you don't really have a Prozac deficiency. You don't have a Zoloft deficiency. It may make you feel better, but that's not getting at the root cause of your problem. And so I'm not a big fan of those things. I think, they cause a lot of alterations in the whole pool of neurotransmitters that are, floating around the body all the time. And, there's many, many, many things that we could do before you would even consider taking medication. But if you're already on it, again, this is why we treat this, because we want people to be able to get off these medications and not have to be on them the rest of their life, because we know that it's not a good scenario for, decades being on these medications. And also, stress can cause the wired and tired feeling. And I'll show you some graphs later on of adrenal stress profiles that indicate when a person might be in that, tired, wired and tired mode. These are the people that have difficulty staying asleep, difficulty getting asleep. They feel like they don't have restful sleep. They may have slept 8 hours, but they, it's just never gone into that deep sleep, so they don't feel refreshed in the morning. They often are anxious during the day. They often end up self-medicating with either, marijuana or wine or beer or whatever. And I am here to tell you, like, maybe you feel calmer with those things, but you're not getting to the root cause of your problem. And I don't think those things long term do us much good. Not that a glass of wine once in a while isn't, fun to have with friends and whatever, but it's not an answer to stress. If you're doing that, if you're self-medicating with those things, we're missing the boat on something. And we should do some more testing to see if we can figure that out. Okay, immunity. So the repeated and chronic stress exposure causes chronic immune system stimulation and eventually suppresses cellular immunity. Immune dysregulation occurs, so you might not respond the way that you normally would. You might not keep those viruses that you may have had. Let's say you had mono when you were a teenager, and you went for years and years, maybe even decades, where, it was pretty good. Your body kept that virus in check. And then all of a sudden you're starting to feel like you may have EBV again, fibromyalgia type symptoms, or chronic pain, or just chronic fatigue, like non-restful sleep, things like that. That could be because adrenal fatigue has suppressed your immune system so much or dysregulated it so much that now you can't regulate those potential viruses and things that you've been exposed to before. Ultimately, this could cause dysregulation of apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. That's one of the terms we use in medicine to talk about how cells kind of go through their life cycle, and then when they're used up or depleted or they don't work right anymore, the body knows this and it breaks that cell up and gets rid of it as it's producing more cells. So that's apoptosis is a normal good thing that happens in the body, programmed cell death. We need to have that. And if that is dysregulated because the immune system's not giving the right signals for that to happen anymore, therefore this can lead to cancer, potentially. And it can cause autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, etc. So definitely your stress levels are linked to many of these things. Okay. So what causes adrenal fatigue? The adrenal glands mobilize your body's responses to all the stresses. We've gone over that through your hormones. This helps you handle the stress at hand. Adrenal fatigue simply occurs when your adrenal glands cannot compensate for the stresses anymore. Whether you have an emotional crisis, a physical crisis, or any type of severe, repeated, or constant stress in your life, if your adrenals can't compensate, you are likely experiencing adrenal fatigue. And there's a fact there. 75% of all Americans have moderate to severe stress. That says something about our culture. Says something about what we need to do to improve our lifestyle and think about what we can do to prevent these sorts of things. So what causes adrenal fatigue? During adrenal fatigue, your adrenal glands function, but their output of regulatory hormones has been diminished, and usually it's because of overstimulation. And overstimulation of your adrenals can be caused either by a very intense single stress or the chronic or repeated stress. So we've kind of gone over that already, but I wanted to give that to you again. So in short, adrenal fatigue occurs when the amount of stress or combined stresses overextend the capacity of the body, mediated by the adrenals, to compensate for and recover from that stress. So that's your simple definition. So once this capacity to cope and recover is exceeded, some form of adrenal fatigue is likely to be present or to occur. Now these are some of my favorite books. Hopefully you can see them on the screen there. See if I can get a little bit better lighting there. Pull this forward a little bit. So this book here, let's see. This book here is one of my favorite books, Adrenal Fatigue, the 21st Century Syndrome. It's an older book, but it's a great book because it just goes through everything. Like many of my lectures over the years have been formed based on that book. And he really spells it out. And Dr. James Wilson, he gives you great recommendations. The second book here, Chronic Fatigue Unmasked. Hopefully you can see that one. That's an old one also by Gerald E. Posnecker, Poesneckeer. He's a naturopath and chiropractor. Chronic Fatigue Unmasked, some great little pearls in there. And this is one of my favorite books here. This is called, I know you can't see the title very well there, and if you want our PowerPoint, just ask the girls and they can send it to you. But this is called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Okay, the reason zebras don't get ulcers, lions don't get ulcers, animals in the wild don't get ulcers, because they have that quick burst of adrenal fight or flight, cortisol. It gets them to run away from the tiger or whatever. And then, 5 minutes later, they can be at the drinking hole, drinking water, It's not built into their system to have all this emotional overlay. They just recover and they go on with their life. And, we're very different from the animals, but this kind of goes into, stress and the details of stress and why as humans we are a bit different. And it's got some really great information. And then this book here is called Revive. Revive, Stop Feeling Spent and Start Living Again by Frank Lipman. And in that book, I just think there's a lot of really great to-dos, a lot of really great information about, where do we go from here, We can guide you through a lot of that too, but, again, knowledge is power, so. And then these two books have to do with two of the very common syndromes that we see in our patients that often cause their immune system to be dysregulated and cause a chronic underlying stress. Or these are things that might get, reactivated or caused by our diet, or many roads lead to yeast overgrowth. And so this book is one of my favorites. It's called The Yeast Connection, a medical breakthrough. If you feel sick all over, this book could change your life. And that's by William G. Crook. I'm 59 now, so I'm getting a little bit older. I've been doing this stuff for over 20 years, so some of these books are older. But there's just classic books that always make sense, that give you your basics, that help you to understand, like, what can I do? And now this book is a newer book. This one is called The Epstein-Barr Virus Solution. And apparently 95% of the population has had Epstein-Barr virus, maybe as a cold, but maybe as mono. And when that Epstein-Barr, or we call it EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, gets reactivated, and if it gets chronically reactivated, it can really wreak havoc on your body. It can cause adrenal fatigue. It can cause immune dysregulation. It can be an underlying cause that leads you down the path to cancer, especially lymphomas. It's also got some relationship between breast cancer and colon cancer. Very related to autoimmune disorders, also very, very related to neurological disorders like MS. If you've been diagnosed with MS, I can't say that I can totally reverse your symptoms, but you may get a lot better. In fact, that's how Kasha Kynes, Dr. Kasha Kynes, who's the doctor of clinical nutrition, she had a friend with multiple sclerosis, MS, a neurodegenerative disease, and she made her a lot better by doing the Epstein-Barr virus protocol that she developed based on scientific literature. She is the first one ever to look throughout like truckloads of scientific data and actually sort out what does actually work for EBV. What works and what doesn't work. And I learned so much from her, and I just love her, and hopefully she's going to speak at one of our conferences next year for our International College of Integrative Medicine so that more doctors understand this is treatable. And giving an antiviral medicine does not work. I've done that for years, and I finally got to the point where I was fed up, and I asked another doctor that I was consulting with at a lab, hey, do you know anything about EBV? I just am at the end of my, rope as far as figuring this out, and I want to help these patients. And they referred me to Kasha Kynes. And the reason I bring that up is because it is so common. It is very common, and it could be one of the root causes of adrenal fatigue. So I wanted to share that with you. So those are some of my favorite books, not an end-all and be-all. There is another gal that I studied recently. Her name is Aviva Ram, MD, ROMM. She has a website, avivaram.com. Mostly she gears her things toward women's health, women's hormones, hormone imbalance in women, and she pulls in the adrenal fatigue aspect. And she's got some books out there. I don't have them yet. I'm interested in getting them because I just learned about her, but she's got some great information. So somebody else you might want to look into. Okay, and then why is everyone different? So one person may withstand distress quite easily and be ready for more, but another person, or that same person at another time, may find the same stress overwhelming and impossible to bear. It is important to understand the onset and continuation of adrenal fatigue has great individual variation. And that was written by James Wilson. He's the author of Adrenal Fatigue, the 21st Century Syndrome. So who is susceptible to adrenal fatigue? Anyone can experience it at any time. And I think we've gone over some of those life factors that would set you up already, life crisis or life-threatening illness, factors that might make you more susceptible. Here's a list: certain lifestyles, chronic stress, no exercise, chronic illness, repeated infections, candida overgrowth, mold or mycotoxin illness, Epstein-Barr virus, chronic reactivated EBV, pregnancy even, depending on where that person started before pregnancy, that is the stress on the body, malabsorption and maldigestion, i.e. leaky gut, hormonal imbalance, and toxic exposures. And examples of lifestyle factors: lack of sleep, poor diet, no vegetables or fruits, no whole real foods, using sweets or salty foods or caffeinated foods or stimulants to, crutch you through your day, staying up late even though you're tired, feeling and acting powerless. Part of this is how you deal with life too, and it takes a change in your mindset and how you're going to approach life and how you're going to keep fighting, and you're going to bring yourself back up that ladder to health. So you have to have the right attitude. You can't expect to come to our office or any doctor's office and say, hey, fix me. It's not how it works. You got to get your head on right, you got to get your viewpoint right, and you're going to have to work at this. It's not going to be an easy fix. Staying in no-win situations is bad, whether that be a bad relationship or a bad job or, a very stressful situation that you should have gotten yourself out of years earlier. And having too few enjoyable or rejuvenating activities. And, I've had to work at this always because I'm a bit of a workaholic. And, luckily I have some fairly good genes and haven't run into too many problems, but I've really had to, get myself to think about, the important things in life and how do I arrange my schedule so I have time for these activities. And my husband is super helpful with that. Thank you, Ross. Examples of people with lifestyles that may make them more vulnerable to adrenal fatigue: full-time university student worse with a job, mother with 2 or more children and little support, single parent, unhappily married person, etc., etc. So you get the drift there. Examples of events that might precipitate adrenal fatigue: frequent crises at work or at home, severe emotional trauma, death, divorce, etc., major surgery, head trauma. I won't belabor the point, but you get the idea. Whoops. Dr. John Tintera, a medical doctor who specialized in low adrenal function, said in 1969 that he estimated that approximately 16% of the public could be classified as severe, but that if all indications of low cortisol were included, the percentage would be more like 66%. And I think that percentage has probably gone higher according to Aviva Romm and some of the stuff I've read from her. So this was before the extreme stress of the 21st century, before 9/11, before computers, before email, Instagram, Wi-Fi, etc., before COVID-19 that we're experiencing right now. So be mindful, and give yourself a break and live your life joyfully if you can, and try to make some changes in the right direction. How do we test for adrenal fatigue? Saliva testing is the most accurate. Blood testing is less accurate. It's really not worth doing. I do it occasionally, just kind of see where a person is, but I would much prefer the saliva test. It's more accurate. It's where you get cortisol and DHEA. You do 4 samples throughout the day, and then this gives us an idea, what pattern of cortisol you're putting out throughout the day. It's, let's see, that kind of is what I just said. Yeah, you can take these test tubes with you if you need to, but it's obviously better to do it on a day when you don't have 20 different things that you're doing. Obviously, if you have a terrible stressor that happens the day of doing the sample, do not send it in, just pick another day. Rinse out the vials and pick another day to do it, because I've seen people that did that and they've got these huge spikes in their cortisol in the middle of the day. Is it reliable? Yes, it is. The National Institutes of Health and the World Health Organization actually back it up. Cortisol and adrenal function, it's called the stress hormone because it influences many of the changes that occur with stress. Blood sugar, gluconeogenesis is when you break down the sugar that's stored in your liver and make that available to the body. That happens during fight or flight, and if that's happening over and over and over again or constantly, obviously that's going to be a problem for your blood sugar. Immune responses, anti-inflammatory actions, blood pressure, heart and blood vessel tone and contraction, central nervous system activation. So all related. Cortisol levels normally peak at about 8 in the morning and reach their lowest level about 4 a.m. So it's vital for the adrenals to secrete more cortisol in response to stress, but cortisol levels must return to normal afterwards, and health problems result if that doesn't happen. So here's an example. Hopefully, let's see if we can get that picture a little bit better. Okay. So this is a one-day hormonal saliva check. And you can see that in the morning, that level is high. It should be like kind of in the high green range. It can be a little bit higher here, but it should be kind of higher in the green range. And then you should stay in that mid to high green range. You can see this person's normal at, noon, but then they're back up again in the afternoon, and then they're kind of normal in the evening. So this is not a normal pattern. It should be a nice curve that goes down throughout the day. And you're not seeing that there. Let's go to our next slide. Try to get these so you guys can see them. Okay, so on this next one, see if I can get that a little bit better for you. Okay, you can kind of see it there. A saliva hormone test measuring 4 separate saliva samples over 24 hours provides insight into cortisol levels throughout the day, as well as one early morning DHEA measurement. Oops, I'm sorry, I can't get that quite to show up for you guys. No, okay. But anyways, you kind of get the idea there. And then let's go to the next one. So on this slide, basically, you can kind of see it there. You have low, like this person is exhausted in the morning. They're waking up and they're feeling Yeah, did I even sleep? And then they go almost a little bit too high at noon, and then they're back down to normal evening and at bedtime. So that person is definitely in trouble. This one, okay, the body's rallying. See if there you go. You can see the first morning cortisol's here, and they're low. So they're not even on the chart in first thing in the morning. Again, they're waking up exhausted. And then, bam, adrenal response is like overly activated all day long. Like this person is not going to sleep well. Because at bedtime, they're up there where they should be when they first get up in the morning. Their adrenal cortisol is backwards. It should be this way, not this way. So that person is definitely in trouble. And then we have, let's see if I can get that. Okay, good. So this one is fairly normal. They're a little low in the morning. This is still not normal. They're low in the yellow range there. Should be a little bit higher. And then this is kind of normal, normal, normal. So this person would probably be a little bit more at the beginning stages of adrenal fatigue maybe, and needs a little bit of work, but it's not crashing. It's not severe and in overdrive like it was in some of those others, or up and down, up and down. So you can see how this could help us to determine what your program would be like and how we can watch this over time. And then higher, more prolonged levels of circulating cortisol have negative effects. Brain fog, dampened thyroid function, hyperglycemia, so high blood sugar, bone loss, osteopenia and osteoporosis, insomnia, fatigue, decreased muscle mass, high blood pressure, immune dysfunction and slow wound healing, increased abdominal fat. All of these are adrenals. Chronically lower levels of circulating cortisol have been associated with negative effects such as, again, brain fog, depression, low thyroid function, low blood sugar. So it could be high blood sugar or low blood sugar. This is more chronic stuff, right? So fatigue, especially morning and mid-afternoon. Like I always ask people, do you have the 2 o'clock tired's? If you have the 2 o'clock tired's, there's a good chance you have adrenal fatigue. Sleep disruption, low blood pressure. These are, again, later stages of more chronic, lower levels of cortisol. It's like it's been high, 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 and now it's starting to crash. Your body cannot keep up. Lowered immune function and inflammation. And then health conditions related to adrenal fatigue. Now, if you already have like an autoimmune disease, that could make you more susceptible to adrenal fatigue. So these are various conditions. So alcoholism, allergies, autoimmune disease, insulin resistance, obesity, chronic recurrent infections, dental problems. And I can tell you, I've had patients with all of these over the years, and we've treated them, and they've gotten better. It's really amazing with just, a moderate amount of effort over many years, how a person can really still thrive, and not just survive, but thrive and reach, their maximum health potential, even if they do have an underlying condition. So, and about food, this is again from James Wilson. He says, even in the best of times, you need food to survive and be healthy. Adrenal fatigue is definitely not the best of times. And so the food choices you make become even more important to your survival and health. And I sort of liken this to some of my cancer patients. It's like, you need to make a choice. Do you want to live? Okay, then you need to change your diet. That's kind of the simplicity of it. I know it's hard when you're in the situation because your brain is telling you, that chocolate cookie with, nuts and berries and whatever else in it, sugar, that's what I need, and your brain will tell you that. Your brain will become addicted to these things. It actually changes its response. And you need to just realize that, and as a thinking, wise, educated person, go, okay, that's not working. I need to change this. And I go through this with all my cancer patients too, and they need to just face the music that what they're eating could be causing part of their problem. You don't want to feed the problem. So you start eating more real food, more whole food, more organic food, drinking more water, drinking less coffee, et cetera, et cetera. We go through a lot of those changes with you. So how to treat adrenal fatigue: eat a wide variety of whole natural foods, combine a healthy fat, protein, and carbohydrate source with every meal, eat lots of vegetables, especially the brightly colored ones. Salt your food to a pleasant taste and use sea salt. And the sea salt actually helps something that's happening in your kidneys with adrenal dysfunction, so that you can maintain the fluid within your cells and keep the cellular functions going. Of course, if you have high blood pressure that's really wacko when you are doing too much salt, we have to take that into consideration. But most people with adrenal fatigue, they need more salt. Eat mainly whole grains as your source of carbohydrate, along with your vegetables. Vegetables really should be your main source of carbohydrate, with a sprinkling of whole grains. And we're talking not like the bread at the corner store, not Wonder Bread, really just as little processed as you can. Eat real oatmeal. Gluten-free would be preferable. Eat real brown rice, and don't eat, 2 cups of it. Have a serving, don't over, indulge, because that's going to give you this super rise in blood sugar and a drop in blood sugar. Combine grains with legumes if you are, more into the vegan or vegetarian eating. I like to do vegetarian days once in a while. I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. I do better with some animal protein, but I don't eat as much animal protein as I used to, and I like to combine these things to get some of my sources sometimes. And avoid fruit in the morning, because that's just going to give you sugar. You need some protein. Mix 1 to 2 tablespoons of fresh essential oils, cold-pressed olive, grapeseed, safflower, flax, etc. Mix that into your grains and vegetables and meats daily to help, you get the good oils. And eat high-quality food, because it becomes you. Summary of foods to avoid: yes, the white foods, the sugar, the flour, pasta, potatoes, rice. Now, is that always, all the time? No. When you get better, you're going to be able to have some of these things. And okay, if you have potatoes, sweet potatoes are certainly better. But please don't eat a whole plate of sweet potatoes. That is not going to help you. You need to keep your, servings human size, okay? Same with the rice. I know people love rice. They'll eat a cup of it. It's not good for you. That's too much. You're talking a quarter cup or maybe a half cup max. And, make it a whole grain brown version. And try to limit this to 2 to 4 servings a day, depending if you're a 6'5" guy or, a 5 foot, petite woman. Hydrogenated and partially hydrogenated oils, you definitely want to avoid anything with the trans fats or these words hydrogenated in it. And avoid deep fried foods. Like, there's a great book out. It's called Radical Aging by Anne Louise Gilman. And in there she talks about these things called AGEs. And AGEs is an acronym for Advanced Glycation End Products. And those are when the oils in the food or the sugars in the food are heated and they become these advanced glycation end products, and they're very inflammatory, very bad for you. So that's why fried foods are so bad. And I know donuts taste great. I don't think I've had a donut in years, but again, no food is off limits forever. But again, we should not be eating this stuff every day. Just like we shouldn't be eating McDonald's every day, or any fast food or fry food or French fries or anything. And I know there are some people that live on this stuff. That's terrible. So now so you can do something about it. The act of eating. So also make your eating a pleasant experience. How you eat can have a huge effect on your adrenal glands just as much as what you eat. So take time to eat, take time to chew your food. That improves your digestion. Take your digestive enzymes with your food if you're taking them. If you have control over your eating environment, choose a peaceful spot with pleasant surroundings. Congenial conversation, good company, promote relaxation and digestion. Eat your food sitting down in a relaxed position. Don't rush through meals. It's also important to chew your food, as I said earlier. Summary of liquids to drink. So this is in James Wilson's book. He likes, avoiding drinks with caffeine. Sometimes people have to wean down on those or go half caffeinated on their coffee, things like that. Water, pure, clean, spring water is best. Many feel better if they slightly salt their water with a couple of shakes of sea salt in the morning. You can do that with every, 8 to 10 ounces that you drink. Green tea, it's got a lot of antioxidants and other detoxification, anti-disease components. Barley tea and bancha tea and herbal teas. And I'm not really familiar with barley tea or bancha tea, but those are things that you could look into. Vegetable juices, these contain many nutrients that are excellent for the body, but it's best to avoid the ones that contain any form of sugar, okay, or fruit juice. And, I just saw a patient today, and she and her husband were doing a lot of carrot juice, and it's very much like sugar. It's not that carrot juice is all bad, but I don't promote carrot juice as a end-all be-all treatment. We do a lot of green juice, promote a lot of green juice if people want to do juicing, and then throw a carrot or a beet or a half an apple in there, but make it mostly green with kale and Swiss chard and spinach, broccoli maybe, broccoli, greens of all sorts. Goat's milk is usually easier to digest than easier to digest than cow's milk, more like human milk. Some people just have to give up all the, milks. Carob can be used as a chocolate substitute because it doesn't aggravate hypoglycemia, and it doesn't overstimulate the adrenals because chocolate has caffeine in it. So carob might be a better choice, a better substitute while you're trying to get through this. Summary of liquids to avoid, or I guess that's liquids and foods: chocolate, caffeine, alcohol, definitely no soda. Soft drinks in general are not healthy, even if they are sugar-free, so to speak. They usually have some other junky sweetener in them, or other chemicals. And this is Dr. James Wilson's tips on how to de-stress. D meaning define what's important and decide to live accordingly. Energize yourself with good foods and exercise. Support your body with supplements. Take time to relax and enjoy. Reframe events that stress you in order to release yourself from those emotions. Eliminate energy robbers, and I think you know what I mean: bad relationships, bad situations, people that don't support you, etc. Sleep and give your body silent solace each day, and smile and see the soulfulness in your life. So that's his little acronym. So define what's important. Reevaluate who and what are important to you and your happiness, and focus on them. Decide to live in a way that corresponds with what you feel is important. And I won't go through all these individually because I know we're coming up on, we're past 7 o'clock, 7:04. If you want these, they're all in James Wilson's book. We'd be glad to send you the PowerPoint, or you can pick it up here as a hard copy. But these are just examples of what he means. On the supplements, I did list a lot of our common adrenal supplements. Serene is, I don't know if you can see that there. Serene, there we go. So you can sort of see it. That's one that we often use to help with depression. Travacore is another one. Travacore has, these are hard to see on the screen here. But Travacore has a wonderful balance of things that help both depression and anxiety. Adrenocalm is something that we use for adrenals that are overstimulated. So sometimes people need something like this during the day, and they'll need something to help them sleep a little bit more at night. Sometimes people are in those exhaustion phases. We use a lot of Adrenal Boost in our practice. And this really has everything in it that James Wilson talks about for your adrenals. You know, there is, you know, some vitamins in here, vitamin C, some B vitamins, B6, B12, B5, pantothenic acid is what B5 is. Adrenal concentrate bovine, so this is a glandular, it contains a glandular. If you're vegan, you wouldn't want to do this. And it's got eleuthero root, rhodiola, schizandra, and Chinese licorice root. And this one also, because it has licorice root in it, those of you who have high blood pressure, you cannot do Adrenal Boost. And we do have supplements that don't have that in it. We have the Desiccated Adrenal, sorry you can't see the label, from Standard Process. We also have Aura Adren. Now, Aura Adren does have, I'm so sorry you can't see the label clearly here, but Aura Adren from Douglas does have adrenal glandulars in it, so again, not a vegan product. Drenamin is also Standard Process. See if we can get that where you can see it. Yeah, Drenamin, great product, does contain some glandulars. Now, Serenogen is a product from Metagenics. This is for the wired and tired person. So this is very calming. It's for the anxious person. It's for the person with a high cortisol in their test. This has become one of my super favorites. I don't know if you can see it there, but Ashwagandha. Say that 10 times fast. Ashwagandha is an amazing supplement, and I love this because it doesn't make you just like tired. It doesn't make you tired at all. It actually helps you with focus. It actually increases this thing called brain-derived neurotrophic factor that helps you focus while staying calm. But this I give to wired and tired people. I give to people who can't sleep. I give to people who can't turn their minds off, you know, and focus when they need to. GABA is another one that's really great. Again, you can't see the label there very well, but it says GABA, G-A-B-A. And GABA is a really wonderful product for people who are anxious or have high cortisol. CalmCP has, you know, some very nice aspects in it as well. Oh, here we go. CalmCP, the green top on that one. Again, this is very hard to see, but CalmCP has a couple of things in it that reduce your cortisol, and we use this a lot for sleep. This is fantastic for sleep, but some people use it during the day for anxiety, stress, feeling overwhelmed easily. Nucera is one that we use from Metagenics. Can't see it very well, but Nucera, N-U-S-E-R-A, that is one that it's kind of like my replacement for Valium. This is great. It's chewable. It works very fast. It'll reduce your cortisol 15% in 5 minutes and up to 40% in 15 minutes, if I said that right. So this is great for people who wake up in the middle of the night, people who have a, you know, upsetting event and they're stressed, you know, people who have that tendency to get stressed very easily. This is my answer to Valium. Adricet, now we're getting into something that people could use if they have you know, high blood pressure and they cannot do licorice root. Adricet is an adrenal adaptogen. It would be vegan, so people that are vegan can take this. And it has ginseng, Panax ginseng, rhodiola, cordyceps. Really great product. It does give you a little boost, so we use that mostly during the day. And then, of course, we want to keep in, you know, our basics. We want to do our daily essentials. If you want to do these packets, these are really great. It's got your multivitamin, your fish oils, and an immune booster in it. And, or you can do your multivitamins separately. This is our, you know, major omega that we use here at the office. It's going to give you 1,500 milligrams per day if you take 2 a day. And then, the Phytomulti is another great multivitamin if you like to only do 2 pills per day for your multi. Most of the other kind of what I call junk vitamins out there, like Centrum, their 2 per day is just nothing. And it's usually junk vitamins. This stuff is really great. It has a super high antioxidant level, and it's 2 pills per day. It's a little more on the pricey side, so... and we have 2 or 3 different multivitamins here. And then we have our ProVital C, This is our liposomal vitamin C. This stuff is great. You're going to absorb way more of it. And this is very, very important for the adrenals. The adrenals have, huge amounts of vitamin C in them. So vitamin C is very important for the adrenals, and we've really been pushing that a lot in the last couple of years to help boost our immune systems and avoid, problems with viral infections, especially this time of year going into our flu season. So I think some of this is a little bit more iteration on the de-stress, promote healing. Yes, and so I won't go through all of those because I know that, it's past my hour. But detoxification, although we never can get enough detoxification, and you're never going to be completely free of chemicals, our goal should be to reduce the level of those chemicals. And I do that with Ultra Clear Plus. I'm doing Ultra Clear Plus detox right now. Actually, I'm using Ultra Clear Renew. Either one of those products would be fine. I do that twice a year. And the recovery plan is, use the supplements, change the lifestyle, get the diet in place, get the hormone balance, the hypothyroidism addressed if you have it. If you have toxic metals, if you have Epstein-Barr virus, if you have candida overgrowth, food sensitivities or allergies, chronic viral illnesses of some sort, that would be Epstein-Barr would be the most common one, or Lyme is another one that might be a problem. Address all these things, balance all these things, one step at a time, and be patient and be ready for the long haul, and don't give up. It can take 1 to 2 years to fully recover. You can also look at our Adrenal Fatigue article that we have on our website, nhicwestmi.com. And I think I will end off for now. Hopefully I've filled your brains with a little bit more information, hopefully not too much. And hopefully I've piqued your curiosity so you know that there is something that you can do about chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue, and that it is, really kind of necessary to look at it and work with a practitioner that knows what they're doing to help you through it, because it's a long road, and it takes time and patience and love and care and nurturing, and that's what we're here to do for you. So you guys have a good night. I'm so glad you came. Thank you for watching, and let me know if there's anything else I could do for you, or if you'd like our PowerPoint handout, please feel free to call the office, 616-301-0808. And we'd be glad to send that to you, whether you're a patient here or not. And check out our website. Our website has tons of really interesting information about lots of different subjects, and adrenal fatigue is on there. So, nhicwestmi.com. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.